All right, let's talk about a situation that probably feels a little too real for a lot of creative people out there. It's all about this tough question: to fit in or not to fit in. So, picture this. You get hired by a company. They say they want you to come in and shake things up, be a catalyst for change. But then, the moment you actually try to, make a move, you hit a brick wall. It's a crazy paradox, and as we're about to see, it's a super common story, especially for service designers. Okay, so let's get right into it. The source material for this explainer calls this a double-edged dilemma. And that's exactly what it is. On one side, you're hired to be this agent of change, to transform the company culture. But on the other, just to survive long enough to do your job, you have to find a way to fit into that very same culture you were hired to change. See the problem? And here's what's so important to get right away. If this sounds like your life, it's not a personal failure. You're not the only one. The research we're digging into here shows that this is a widespread, systemic problem. It's actually baked into the structure of how a lot of companies work. So what's really going on under the hood here? To get to the root of this, we've got to stop blaming individuals and start looking at the system itself. And this is where this key concept comes in: organizational failure. It's a term from researcher Mauricio Manhajes, and it's a game changer. It argues that these constant struggles aren't just your personal problem. Nope, they are symptoms of a broken social system inside the company. Just think about that for a second. What if the problem isn't you, but the environment you're in? That shift in perspective is everything. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you have the individual blame route. That's the easy way out for a lot of companies, right? Find a scapegoat. But if you frame it as an organizational failure, like on the right, suddenly the whole conversation changes. It opens the door for people to work together on real solutions and empowers everyone to actually fix the system instead of just pointing fingers. Now, the research goes even deeper, and this is where it gets really fascinating and kind of troubling. It points to this dynamic it calls design's femininity. The idea is that a lot of the traits we link with creative work, being intuitive, empathetic, community-focused, are culturally stereotyped as feminine. And that perception, it has some serious real-world consequences. I mean, this quote from the source says it all. Because those feminine traits are often seen as less valuable in a traditional corporate world, designers get pigeonholed. They're seen as beautification assistants, people who just make things look pretty, not as strategic partners who are crucial to the business. So how do we know this is a real shared thing and not just a few one-off stories? Well, the researchers didn't just stop at the theory. They actually mapped the whole thing out, creating a journey map from the real experiences of designers on the front lines. And this map is built on a really solid foundation. We're talking about interviews and surveys with 41 service designers and other creative pros. So this gives us a really clear data-driven picture of what's happening. And just look at who this is happening to. These are not junior employees just starting out. The vast majority are experienced, highly educated professionals working in huge companies. And for over half of them, get this wasn't a one-time thing. It's a repeating pattern they faced at different jobs. That's not a coincidence. That's a systemic issue. All of this data was then used to create what the author calls a true fiction journey map. It's a brilliant way to put it. It's not any single person's story, but it's a true story, weaving together all those common experiences into one narrative. It shows that what feels like a lonely struggle is actually a predictable collective journey. So let's take a look at the journey itself. It plays out over 6 distinct stages. It all starts with the high hopes of the hiring and expectation phases. Then you move into building relationships. But then comes the turn, the revelation, when the reality of the system starts to sink in. That's followed by the organization's reaction, and finally, the result. So where does this journey usually lead? Well, there are 2 possible endings, but the path is so full of roadblocks that it tends to push designers toward one very specific and pretty negative outcome. The research found that a lot of these roadblocks are, frankly, forms of workplace bullying. It's not just professional disagreements. We're talking about real verbal hostility, being constantly stereotyped, having your work intentionally blocked, and even being socially excluded by your own team. So when you put all that together, the most common outcome is what the research calls estrangement. It's that feeling of complete alienation and rejection from the organization. Now, belonging is an option. It is possible, but the systemic failures make it so much harder to achieve. And this estrangement, it doesn't just crush morale, it tanks performance and well-being, which hurts everyone, including the business. But here is the hopeful part. This map isn't just a sad story. Its real power is that it can be a tool for change. It gives us a blueprint for designing a better journey for everybody. And the solution really clicks into place with this incredible quote from Nobel laureate Herbert Simon. Everyone designs who devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. Let that sink in. This reframes design not as some special skill for the creatives, but as a core business activity for everyone. So maybe the problem isn't that designers need to learn business. Maybe the real solution is that businesses need to learn design. So how do we actually use this map? The source gives us 5 clear steps. First, use the map to figure out where you and your team are right now. Then, share it with your colleagues and managers to get everyone on the same page. From there, you can work together to come up with solutions and, crucially, commit to a no scapegoating culture. And the final step is to advocate for the whole organization to really embrace design thinking. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. This map shows us the broken path that so many have walked. But by understanding it, by sharing it, we now have the power to design a new path forward. So the question isn't just to fit or not to fit anymore. The real question is, how do we start designing a culture where everyone can truly belong and do their best work?